You pay the bill. After all, it's not my daughter's party. As our daughter's christening celebration came to an end, my husband tried to pass the bill to me, but I remained completely still, sitting there. A look of panic crossed Daniel's face as he searched for words. All eyes, those of his parents, our relatives, and even his coworkers, turned toward me. But there was something they didn't know. I already knew everything. I knew my husband was having an affair with his first love. I knew he had secretly diverted tens of thousands of dollars from our baby's savings account to pay for that woman's hospital bills. And today, this lavishly decorated party wasn't a celebration for my daughter Lily. It was the stage for my cold revenge. A platform to rip the hypocritical mask off my husband in front of everyone he cared about. How did this woman manage to break free from a toxic marriage and achieve such a satisfying revenge? Subscribe, hit the like button, and let me tell you today's story. An unbearable headache had been pounding my skull all afternoon, making it impossible to focus on the reports piling up on my desk. After getting my boss's okay, I left work early and caught a cab in the pouring rain. When I got home, the familiar silence wrapped around me. Daniel, a project manager at a real estate development firm, would never be home at this hour. I dragged my exhausted body inside, dropped my keys on the entryway table, and kicked off my work heels. I was heading straight to the bedroom to crash when I stopped in front of Daniel's home office. The door was slightly ajar. On his desk sat a cold cup of coffee and an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts. Oddly, the computer monitor was glowing bright. Daniel was so meticulous, almost obsessive about the electric bill, that he rarely forgot to shut down his computer before leaving. I walked in, fully intending to hit the power button, but my eyes locked onto something in the bottom right corner of the screen. The Facebook Messenger icon was active. Normally, I never checked my husband's phone or computer. I believe trust was the bedrock of a marriage, but that day was different. A tiny padlock symbol hovered over the messenger icon, indicating a new message in a secret conversation. The feminine intuition that had been lying dormant inside me, now 6 months pregnant, began to stir violently. I pulled out the chair, sat down, and rested my hand on the mouse, clicking the padlock icon. The system asked for a PIN. I hesitated for a second. Then I remembered Daniel's habit of creating codes using family birthdays. I punched in his birth date. Incorrect. Our wedding anniversary. Incorrect again. On the third try, I thought of his unusually close relationship with his mother. I combined his mother's birth year with his own, and the screen flickered, opening the secret chat window right before my eyes. A single short name appeared. Chloe. The last message, which had come through barely 10 minutes ago, hit me like a physical punch. Daniel, thank you so much for taking the day off to come to the hospital with me. The doctor said the baby is growing strong and healthy. It was amazing when I felt a little kick in the car. Right below it was Daniel's reply. I'm so glad to hear the baby is healthy. Get some rest. Something urgent came up at work, so I have to swing by the office. I'll call you tonight. I froze in the chair. The sound of the rain outside vanished, replaced by a dull ringing in my ears. My husband had gone to an OBGYN appointment with another woman. The baby in her belly had kicked. In that exact second, my own stomach shifted as my 6-month-old baby stirred. 2 lives, 2 women, and 1 man. The truth was so brutal, so crystal clear, that it left absolutely no room for denial. My hands went ice cold, but my mind became hauntingly lucid. I scrolled the mouse wheel and started working my way backward through the entire chat history. It had all started 3 months ago, right when I was in my first trimester, battling severe morning sickness. Reading line by line, I pieced the story together. Chloe wasn't a stranger. She was Daniel's college girlfriend, his first love. He had mentioned her once in passing, saying it was a youthful romance that ended because of personality differences. But the truth was, they had never entirely cut contact. 3 months ago, Chloe had reached out to him complaining about her miserable life. She had just gone through a messy divorce, and to make matters worse, she found out she was pregnant. Her ex-husband denied the child was his and kicked her out of the house. And in her most vulnerable moment, my husband extended his hand. The first messages were just words of comfort and encouragement, but soon the tone of their conversation took a drastic turn. "Daniel, don't worry, Chloe. I won't let you or the baby suffer. I'll take care of you. You just focus on staying healthy. I'll handle the rest." "Chloe, I feel so guilty about your wife, Jennifer. I don't want to ruin your family. I'm so scared." My husband was quick to reassure her. "Our marriage has been broken for a long time. Jennifer is a workaholic, a cold person. The most important person in my life is you, Chloe. When the baby is born, I promise I'll make you and our child officially mine. The most important person in my life is you." Reading that sentence, a violent wave of nausea rose from the very pit of my stomach. I clamped my hand over my mouth, barely managing to hold it in. While I was hunched over the toilet, throwing up everything I ate and losing sleep to protect our child, my husband was using the cruelest words to belittle me while winning over his lover's heart. He was perfectly willing to raise another man's child while looking at his own wife, pregnant with his own flesh and blood, as nothing more than an obstacle that needed to be shoved aside. But it didn't end there. I examined the screenshots of bank transfers they had been sending back and forth. Daniel had a separate savings account at another bank where his work bonuses were deposited. I knew it existed, but since I was also financially independent and believed a man needed his own space, I had never snooped. But that private stash was going straight to a third party. In March, Daniel sent Chloe $1,000 with the note, "For your health, buy yourself something good to eat." In April, he sent her $2,500. "Find a studio in a safe building. I'll worry about the rent." In May, another $500 with a note for maternity clothes and other essentials. I did a quick calculation in my head. In just 3 months, my husband had handed his first love a grand total of $4,000. A knot of sorrow formed in my throat, choking me. Just last week, Daniel and I had pulled $1,000 from our joint savings account to buy newborn essentials and discussed getting a high-end stroller. I also brought up the idea of hiring a night nurse for the first few weeks to help out while I recovered. At the time, Daniel had frowned with a calculating tone. "The economy is tough right now. Let's just stick to the basics. A night nurse is a luxury we can't afford. Our parents' generation managed on their own. We can get a used stroller from my brother's kids. We're about to be parents. We need to learn how to save." I had agreed without a single complaint, thinking he was just being a responsible, forward-thinking husband. Yet, that same responsible husband was dropping $4,000 on his mistress without blinking an eye. In a conversation from the day before, Chloe had asked, with fake concern, "Your baby's due date is getting close. What are you going to do about Jennifer?" Daniel's response was ice cold. "I have a plan to take care of her end. I'm just looking for an excuse to leave the house. You don't need to worry about her." Her. One single dismissive word. His legal wife, pregnant with his child, was just a problem to be dealt with. I sprinted to the bathroom and threw up everything in my stomach. By the time I had dry heaved up the lunch I ate at work, tears were streaming down my face, and my throat was burning. I washed my face and stared at the haggard woman in the mirror. Swollen eyes, messy hair, and a 6-month baby bump. I cried silently, mourning my own sheer gullibility and my absurd devotion over our 3 years of marriage. I had handed over everything, my emotions, my youth, to a hypocrite and a piece of trash. But strangely, that crushing sense of despair lasted exactly 15 minutes. When I looked down at my belly and felt the gentle flutter of my daughter, my mind calmed down in the most incredible way. I wiped my face and walked back into the home office. I didn't scream. I didn't call him. I didn't tear anyone's hair out. That's what women do when they want to save their marriage. For me, the exact second the boundaries of respect were violated so brutally, this marriage stopped being worth saving. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. One by one, I meticulously photographed every single conversation and every transaction record. When I finished, just to stop him from ever claiming the images were doctored, I recorded a continuous video scrolling from the very top of the chat all the way to the bottom. Then I opened an incognito browsing tab, logged into my personal email, and forwarded all the evidence I had just collected to a private email address only I knew about. Once that was done, I carefully closed the messenger window, cleared the browser history, and left the computer screen looking exactly as it had when I walked in. I hit the lights in the office, went to the bedroom, slipped into my pajamas, and climbed into bed. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, a brand new performance would begin. I would play the role of the happiest wife in the world, right up until I could end this tragedy on my own terms. A month had passed since that fateful rainy day. Now, at 7 months pregnant, my body felt heavy and clumsy. Daniel kept playing the role of the flawless husband to the letter. Every day after work, he brought home food supposedly great for pregnant women, or a bag of fresh fruit. The second he walked through the door, he would ask me, with pure tenderness, how I was doing and how the baby was holding up. "Jennifer, I brought you some clam chowder. Eat it while it's hot. Do you want me to warm it up for you?" I would smile, take the container from his hands, and try to keep my voice steady. "Thanks, honey. Things are really crazy at work, huh?" Daniel would sigh, rub his shoulders, and launch into a story about a tough contract or a demanding client. His acting was so convincing that if I hadn't seen those messages with my own 2 eyes, I would have firmly believed my husband was sacrificing himself for our family. I would lift the soup to my mouth with the spoon, look him dead in the eye, and nod with understanding. The food tasted like ash, but I forced myself to swallow it down just to get enough nutrients to the baby growing inside me. The next morning, taking advantage of some free time, I visited the office of an attorney, Mrs. Davis. She specialized in divorce and asset division. The moment I walked into her office, I placed a stack of carefully printed documents on her desk. Inside were the messenger screenshots, the video of me scrolling the secret chat, and a full bank statement showing the $4,000 bleeding out of Daniel's bonus account straight to Chloe. Mrs. Davis flipped through the pages, her eyes growing wider with surprise. "I've been doing this for 15 years, she said, looking up at me. "I've seen a lot of wives break down in this office after finding out about their husband's affairs. But you are the very first one to walk in this calm, with evidence gathered this systematically. What are your terms for the divorce?" I laced my fingers together on the desk and answered with absolute clarity. "I want full custody of our child, no exceptions. As for the assets, our apartment is in both our names, so I demand half. I want our joint savings account frozen immediately, so he can't touch it. And regarding the $4,000 he sent his mistress, since that money was part of our marital estate, I want him legally forced to pay back my half, meaning $2,000. Mrs. Davis nodded in agreement. She walked me through the process of filing the lawsuit and how to protect my legal rights during the proceedings. She heavily emphasized that I shouldn't raise any suspicions and should maintain my daily routine as usual so as not to tip him off or give him a chance to hide assets. Stepping out of the lawyer's office, I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. The legal process was in the hands of an expert. My job now was to protect my health and prepare to shatter the final illusion of those two fools who were currently basking in the dark. That weekend, Daniel claimed he had a late meeting with a major client out of town. I knew exactly who that client was. Lying in bed, I pulled up Chloe's phone number, which I had secretly jotted down from Daniel's phone, and added her as a contact. Then I sent her a friend request on Facebook. She accepted it almost instantly. She must have been dying of curiosity to know why her lover's wife was reaching out. I had no intention of keeping her waiting. I sent the first message polite but razor sharp. Hi, Chloe. I'm Jennifer Daniel's legal wife. I think it's about time the three of us had an honest conversation. Not even 5 seconds later, the typing indicator popped up. She replied at a frantic pace, as if she had a script prepped for this exact scenario. Hi, Jennifer. I don't really know what you're talking about. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Daniel and I are just old college friends. Nothing is going on, and we haven't done anything to hurt you. I let out a dry laugh in the empty room. Women who steal other people's husbands always love to wrap themselves in the noble disguise of old college friends. I had no intention of arguing or dragging myself through the mud with insults. A smart woman doesn't waste time on such useless things. I opened my photo gallery and selected the screenshot of the $2,500 bank transfer from Daniel to Chloe. The sender and recipient names were crystal clear. I hit send and added a short caption. That's a very expensive friendship. It's totally normal for friends to help each other out every month with rent and medical bills. $4,000 in 3 months. What a deeply profound friendship you two have. After that message, my phone screen went dead silent. The read receipt clearly appeared below the photo, but no reply came. Her silence was the most glaring proof of the humiliation she felt with her true face now exposed. She never would have imagined that the wife she thought was a fool had tracked every single dollar of their transactions. I locked the phone and tossed it aside. The first silent confrontation ended in a flash, but its impact was absolute. I had completely shattered her fake saint routine. I didn't care if she ran crying to complain to Daniel that night. The final act of this play had already been written by my own hand. All that was left for them was to slowly choke down the bitter fruit they had planted. I woke up the next morning feeling surprisingly refreshed. I checked my phone and saw a new text message from an unknown number. I had Messenger set to block messages from strangers, so Chloe had resorted to a regular text to keep her performance going. It seemed she couldn't stand being caught red-handed without an excuse. I opened the text. The long, rambling text was a desperate attempt to paint herself as a pitiful victim. Jennifer, I am truly sorry if my actions have caused you pain, but I didn't know Daniel was still living with you. He told me your relationship had ended a long time ago and that you were getting divorced soon. He said you didn't have feelings for him anymore. Reading the first text, I just snorted in disgust at the classic lies of a cheating husband and the unbelievably absurd excuses of the other woman. The second message was a sob story about her rough situation. I just got divorced, and things have been so hard. The baby I'm carrying was abandoned by his father, and I was thrown out on the street. Then Daniel showed up and helped me and my baby. I'm just a vulnerable woman who needed someone to lean on. I treated that money as a loan from him. I plan to pay it back when I get back on my feet. I really didn't want to ruin your family. The third message was a plea for pity. Jennifer, you're pregnant too, so I hope you can understand my situation as a mother-to-be. Please don't blow this out of proportion. What fault does the baby in my belly have? When he's born, I'll quietly step away and give Daniel back to you. After reading all 3 texts, the woman just seemed pathetic to me. She had the nerve to commit the act, but not the spine to take responsibility for it. She was using her unborn child as a human shield to hide her greed, blaming everything on my husband's lies, and conveniently ignoring her own calculated moves and selfishness. Instead of getting mad, calling to scream at her, or typing out a massive essay in response, I chose absolute silence and deleted all 3 messages from my phone. A pregnant woman didn't need to pollute her mind with that kind of garbage. Her apology couldn't change reality, and whether she stepped away or gave my husband back was none of my business anymore. I never take back things that other people have used. My only goal now was to build a rock-solid future for the daughter I was about to bring into the world. All my energy was focused entirely on myself and the little girl growing inside me every single day. I was 9 months along, with my due date just a week away. I felt like my body had reached its absolute limit. My legs were swollen, and even walking felt like a marathon. I had gone on maternity leave and was resting at home. I prepped everything for the baby's arrival all by myself. Daniel, using the end-of-year close at work as an excuse, and the need to tend to his mistress, who was also close to her due date, was barely ever home. I ordered diapers online. I washed the baby clothes and folded them neatly into a pink basket. As I sat on the couch folding those tiny, palm-sized onesies, my mind drifted back to the day we first met. 4 years ago, I met Daniel through a mutual friend. On our first date at a little coffee shop, he wore a crisp white shirt and spoke in a calm, gentle way. I remember his hands being exceptionally clean and well-kept. Throughout our whole conversation, he was incredibly attentive. He pulled out my chair, poured my water, and asked sweetly about my job and my hobbies. He once told me, "Taking care of people is just second nature to me. When I see the people I love happy, my mind is at peace." I, who had always dreamed of a normal family, fell head over heels for that fake warmth and that sense of security, and I nodded yes when he proposed. On our wedding day, the way he looked at me at the altar seemed so full of sincerity. I thought I had found the most solid pillar of my life, but time is the cruelest solvent. It stripped away the glossy facade and laid bare the selfish nature of a person. The hands that once poured my water were now using our family's money to keep another woman afloat. And the eyes that once looked at me with love were now filled with cold calculation. A sharp kick to my ribs snapped me back to the present. My daughter was reacting to the outside world. I placed a hand over my belly and rubbed it gently to soothe her. When the momentary pain passed, a steel determination settled into my chest. Marrying him was a mistake, but this little girl was a precious gift I wouldn't trade for the world. I made a promise to myself. No matter what hardships came my way, even if I lost money, I would protect this little girl to the bitter end. From that second on, I was no longer Daniel's submissive wife. I was a fierce mother, ready to claw back a peaceful life for my daughter. The contractions started early on a Wednesday morning during my 39th week of pregnancy. My stomach tightened like a rock, and waves of pain radiated from my back down to my lower abdomen. I gritted my teeth, reached out to flick on the bedside lamp, and woke Daniel up. He rolled out of bed, half asleep, grabbed the pink hospital bag I had packed, and awkwardly helped me into a cab heading for the hospital. The maternity waiting room was filled with the groans of other expectant mothers. I gripped the cold metal railing of the hospital bed, my clothes soaked in sweat. Daniel stood right by my side, gripping my hand and whispering, "You can do this, honey. I'm right here with you." Looking up at his worried face, I thought the version of me from 3 months ago might have cried tears of gratitude, but the me of today could only manage a bitter smile. He was such a damn good actor. It was no wonder both Chloe and I had fallen so easily into his trap. At 7 in the morning, our daughter's first cry echoed through the delivery room. The doctor wrapped that reddish little baby in a white blanket and laid her on my chest. Feeling the warmth of that tiny life, I felt my heart melt, and all my exhaustion seemed to vanish into thin air. I named her Lily. It was a simple name, but it held my deepest hope that her life would be peaceful. It was also an oath. No matter what storms were waiting for us, this mother would weather it all to give her daughter a quiet life. A nurse rolled over a wheelchair to take me and the baby out, and Daniel rushed over. Tears welled up in his eyes as he took my hand, kissed my forehead, and thanked me over and over again. Some families in the neighboring rooms whispered with envy. They said I was lucky to have a husband who spoiled his wife and daughter so much. I just responded with a tight smile. Sitting back in the wheelchair, I watched him nail the final scene of the exemplary father. He played his part brilliantly, but I, his sole audience member, already knew the ending of the next act. 2 days later, I was discharged. My mom, who lived in a small town upstate, caught a bus down to help me with my postpartum recovery. Seeing her walk in, carrying bags stuffed with homemade chicken stew and vegetables straight from her garden, brought tears to my eyes. My mom bustled around, cleaning the room, cooking, and washing her granddaughter's diapers. Holding Lily in her arms, she told me, "A new mother's body is fragile, so you need to take good care of yourself. Seeing how Daniel looks after you and the baby puts my mind at ease. Your dad can handle the house, so I can stay here for a few months. Don't you worry about a thing. Just focus on bouncing back." At night, my mom took over Lily duty, letting me get the sleep I so desperately needed. Daniel was on his best behavior too. He'd get home from work, roll up his sleeves, and help my mom in the kitchen. Many times, watching my aging mother work herself to the bone for me late into the night. I wanted to lean on her shoulder and just sob. I wanted to tell her the horrific truth about the son-in-law she praised so highly. But I gritted my teeth and held it in. My mom had high blood pressure and had spent her whole life just wanting her daughter to have a peaceful family. If she found out the truth while I was recovering, it would absolutely crush her. I couldn't put that weight on her. The divorce plan remained my secret alone. I quietly waited for the right moment to strike. Time flew by, and with Lily already 3 months old, it was time to plan her christening. One Saturday night after dinner, Daniel, who was watching TV in the living room, suddenly suggested we throw a party. He grabbed a piece of paper and started sketching things out, totally hyped up. He insisted it had to be a huge blowout, saying he'd book 3 large tables in the banquet hall of the fanciest hotel in town. The guest list would include our parents, extended family, his coworkers, and even some high-roller clients. Hearing this, I frowned and pushed back. I pointed out that the baby was only 3 months old and could easily catch a bug in a loud, crowded place. Besides, a party at a grand hotel would cost a fortune, and with diapers and formula to buy, we couldn't afford to burn through cash. Hearing my objections, Daniel immediately waved his hand, brushing my opinion aside. "It's our daughter's christening, a once-in-a-lifetime event. We can't just do something small. All my buddies throw huge parties. If we do something cheap, people will look down on us. Plus, it's a perfect chance to invite clients and network. This isn't just a party for our daughter. It's about my reputation too. You just stay home and take care of Lily. I'll handle all the bookings. Don't worry about the money. His over-the-top enthusiasm set off every alarm bell in my head. Why would a guy who used to penny pinch at the grocery store suddenly want to throw a bash at a luxury hotel? That night, while Daniel was snoring away next to me, I quietly swiped his phone, unlocked it with his passcode, and checked his banking app. What I saw ignited a massive inferno of rage inside me. Our joint savings account, the 12 grand we had saved up for the baby's delivery, costs and emergencies, had been completely drained 3 days ago. I quickly checked the transaction history. $5,000 had been wired straight to Chloe's account with a crystal clear memo. First installment for delivery costs. Use this for the hospital bill for now. A huge chunk of the remaining cash had been dropped as a deposit for the hotel banquet hall. The rest he had probably pocketed as walking around money. I clenched my jaw, digging my nails deep into my palms. He truly was the absolute worst kind of scum. He had drained the money his wife busted her ass to save just to cover his mistress's delivery bills, and then used what was left to throw a flashy party to stroke his own hollow ego. I silently took screenshots of every transaction and forwarded them to my secret email. It all made perfect sense now. This upcoming party wasn't for Lily. It was the perfect cover for Daniel to throw an early celebration for the child he was having with his side piece. It was a brazen, spit-in-the-face insult to me and my daughter. But Daniel had grossly misjudged me. He figured I was just a docile little wife who would sit quietly in the corner nursing the baby. He had absolutely no clue that this lavish party he was so carefully piecing together was going to become the ultimate stage for me to expose his entire sickening charade. I put his phone right back where I found it and gently tucked Lily in. I decided to give him a party he would never, ever forget. The day of the party finally arrived. Bright and early, my mom was busy getting her granddaughter ready. She dressed Lily in a gorgeous little pink dress. I wasn't about to show up looking like a worn-out postpartum mess either. I threw open my closet and pulled out the most striking red dress I owned. One I had bought before getting pregnant. The tailored fit highlighted my pale skin and cleverly masked my still recovering figure. I sat down at the vanity, brushed on a light layer of foundation, and painted my lips a bold crimson. I pulled my hair back into a sleek bun, revealing a bright, dead-set face. When I walked out of the bedroom, my mom looked at me with a mix of shock and pride, gushing about how gorgeous I looked, even after just having a baby. Daniel, who was out in the living room, fussing over the guest list, was practically speechless for a few seconds when he saw me. He walked over, wrapped an arm around my waist, and showered me with compliments. I soaked up his fake flattery with the coolest attitude imaginable. At exactly 11 in the morning, our family rolled up to the hotel. The banquet hall was decked out spectacularly, with balloons, fresh floral arrangements, and a massive banner that read, "God bless Lily on her christening day." The guests started pouring in, and soon the 3 large tables were packed with relatives from both sides. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses set a lively, buzzing mood. My in-laws greeted everyone with beaming faces. My mother-in-law held Lily in her arms, showing her off like a trophy as she made the rounds from table to table. Daniel's aunt walked over, stroked Lily's head, and laughed with pure joy. "Oh, look at that nose and that mouth! She looks exactly like Daniel. And she's so chubby. Jennifer has done an amazing job. You grandparents must be so thrilled to have such a beautiful granddaughter." The praise just kept coming. Everyone kept patting Daniel on the back for being such a stand-up guy, throwing such a gorgeous party for his wife and kid. They kept telling me how lucky I was to have a husband who knew how to provide and put his family first. I sat at the head table, picking at my food, though I couldn't taste a damn thing. Everything around me felt like a perfectly staged theater production. From my lying husband laughing and schmoozing across the room, to the relatives singing praises of this fake bliss. No one knew the ugly, rotten truth hiding right behind those smiles. I took a sip of water and swept my eyes across the room. The place was loud, but my mind was incredibly quiet. It was the absolute serenity of someone holding all the cards. A thick folder packed with hard evidence rested securely in the purse on my lap. Every document, every photo, every bank statement was locked and loaded. Today, right here, under these bright chandeliers, with both families and all their friends gathered around, I was going to rip the mask off the model husband with my own 2 hands. I was going to make every single person witness the true face of a man who drained a joint savings account to fund his mistress. My calm was the brief silence before a massive hurricane. Halfway through the party, people had finished eating and were kicking back, chatting, and toasting. Suddenly, Daniel stood up, grabbed his wine glass, and tapped it lightly with a spoon to get the room's attention. The chatter died down, and all eyes locked onto him in the center of the hall. Daniel cleared his throat and launched into his well-rehearsed speech. His voice was deep and smooth. He thanked the relatives on both sides for taking time out of their busy schedules to show up. He talked about the grind at work and the late nights he spent hustling to provide for his family. Then he turned to me with this deeply affectionate look and said in a totally moving tone, "To all our family, friends, and colleagues, the person I want to thank the most today is my wife, Jennifer. For 10 long months, she carried our daughter and brought a healthy, beautiful little girl into the world. I will carry the weight of her sacrifice in the bottom of my heart forever. As a regular working guy, having a steady job and a warm family like this is the greatest blessing I could ever ask for." This party isn't just to celebrate my daughter's big milestone, but to show my endless gratitude to my amazing wife. Thunderous applause erupted. My in-laws, sitting right next to me, nodded with absolute pride, and a few guests smiled with pure envy. Daniel raised his glass high, toasted to good health, and downed it in one gulp while the crowd cheered. The performance had hit its flawless climax, the ultimate picture of a responsible family man. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. After draining his glass, Daniel slowly sat back down next to me. In stark contrast to the swagger he had showing off just seconds ago, he leaned in and whispered, his voice low enough that only the 2 of us could hear, "Jennifer, when the party wraps up, can you put the bill on your card? The company's cash flow is a little tight at the start of the month, so all my cards are maxed out. I burned through most of my cash on the decorations and tipping the staff. Between us, it doesn't matter who pays, right? Please." Hearing those words, I managed to crack a faint smile. It was a masterfully disguised smile, but it was dripping with utter contempt. I turned to him with a serene look and nodded. "Sure, I'll take care of it. You go mingle with the guests." My easy agreement made Daniel let out a massive sigh of relief. He patted the back of my hand gently. Then he popped right back up and headed over to another table, clinking glasses and roaring with laughter with the crowd. Watching his back disappear into the sea of people, the disgust inside me hit its absolute peak. What a pathetic little scheme. He had emptied our joint account, wired $2,000 to his mistress for her delivery, and blown the rest on a deposit for a party just to stroke his own ego. And at the 11th hour, He planned to dump the remaining balance on me, forcing me to fund his little circus with my modest paycheck. Everything was going exactly to his plan, but he miscalculated one crucial detail. My paycheck was for my daughter's formula, not for propping up a trader's fragile pride. I subtly unzipped my purse and rested my hand on the document folder tucked inside. The check was coming soon, and the time to pull the plug on this trashy soap opera was closing in fast. Around 1 in the afternoon, the party was winding down. Guests had put down their forks and were picking at the fruit platters. The chatter kept going, but the volume had dialed back. Just then, a young waiter in a crisp white shirt walked through the doors holding a black leather billfold. He marched straight over to the head table where I was sitting with my in-laws. He smiled and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, sir. I hope you enjoyed the meal. Here is the final bill for the banquet hall and catering. After the deposit, the remaining balance is $4,500. Please review it and process the payment." The waiter set the billfold smack in the middle of the table, right between Daniel and me. My in-laws paused their conversation and looked over at their son. Daniel played it cool, nudging me in the ribs and winking at me repeatedly. He gave a little jerk of his chin, signaling me to open my purse and whip out my card, but I didn't move an inch. I sat bolt upright in my chair, hands folded neatly on the table, my expression completely stone cold. Seeing me hesitate, Daniel started to sweat. People were watching. He leaned in and hissed through his teeth, "What are you doing? Hurry up. Everyone's looking. Just swipe the card. I'll Venmo you the money when we get home." I slowly turned my head and stared dead into his eyes. My gaze didn't hold a shred of patience or submission anymore, just pure, unadulterated disgust. I shoved the billfold right back at Daniel. Then I stood up, cleared my throat, and declared in a voice so sharp and clear that every single person in the room whipped around to look. "You pay the bill. After all, it's not my daughter's party." In a split second, a suffocating silence slammed down on the banquet hall. The clinking of silverware stopped dead. My in-laws stared at me completely shell-shocked. Relatives on both sides started whispering furiously. Everyone knew that the baby sleeping peacefully in the bassinet was the daughter I had pushed out the little girl my own mother had been taking care of since we left the hospital. And now, here I was, loudly declaring she wasn't my daughter. Daniel's jaw practically hit the floor. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a corpse. He grabbed my arm, trying to yank me back down into my seat, stammering as he scrambled to do damage control. "Jennifer, have you been drinking? If you're drunk, stop making a scene. Our Lily is right over there. Have you lost your mind? Everyone, I am so sorry. My wife is exhausted today and doesn't know what she's saying." I violently ripped my arm out of his grip. "I am not crazy, and I am not drunk." Under the horrified stares of the entire room, I flipped the script. I pointed a finger straight at the model husband's face and spat out every word, slow and deliberate. "Lily is my daughter. No one can deny that. But this party isn't for her. This whole elaborate setup is a smokescreen, isn't it? A party to celebrate the baby you're about to have with your first love, paid for with the delivery fund you stole from me. Just a few days ago, you wired that woman $5,000 for her hospital bills. You threw an $8,000 party to cover up your own filth, and now you're trying to force me to foot the rest of the bill. That illegitimate kid isn't mine, so I have absolutely zero obligation to pay this tab." Every single word I dropped hit the table like a sledgehammer. The buzzing banquet hall had instantly morphed into a tense, high-stakes family courtroom. The play was officially over, and all the ugly truths were laid bare for everyone to see. The room was thick with shock. The air was so heavy you could hear people breathing. My father-in-law slammed his hand down on the table, making the glasses rattle. He glared furiously at Daniel and roared, "Daniel, what the hell is your wife talking about? What is all this? Did you cheat on her and have another kid on the way?" My mother-in-law, looking completely lost, gripped the edge of the table with shaking hands. She looked at me with pleading eyes, desperately trying to salvage whatever dignity was left. "Jennifer, sweetheart, calm down. This has to be some kind of misunderstanding from something you heard. Daniel works so hard for this family. Where would he even find the time to cheat on you? You can't just accuse your husband like this without proof." I understood her reaction. No mother wants to believe her son is a despicable piece of garbage. But I had prepped way too well for this exact moment. I unzipped the purse on my lap and pulled out the thick folder of perfectly organized documents. I slammed it down dead center on the banquet table. The smack of paper against glass was sharp and final. "The proof you want to see, Mom? I've printed it all right here. From the text messages about his OBGYN appointments to the screenshots of the bank wire transfers. It's all in there." I turned to face the crowd, projecting my voice so every relative in the back could hear every detail. "For the past 3 months, while I was stuck at home puking my guts out, your son got back together with a woman named Chloe, his first love. That woman was divorced, pregnant with another man's kid, and had been kicked out on the street. And then your son swooped in playing savior, promising to raise the kid and take full responsibility for them." I flipped to the second page. Here are the bank records. In just 3 months, he secretly funneled her a total of $4,000. That money is the sweat and blood of our family. Money I saved up penny by penny for my own daughter. I jammed my finger onto a page with a full-color printout of a text thread. On page 5, you'll see where he calls his mistress the most important person in his life. He said, "I was just an obstacle that needed to be cleared out so they could be together." And the grand finale was 3 days ago, when he drained our joint savings to pay for that woman's delivery costs and booked this hall to play the role of the doting husband. My father-in-law snatched the documents with trembling hands. His eyes darted over the cruel messages and the undeniable transfer receipts. His face turned beet red with rage. He grabbed a water glass off the table and smashed it on the floor, pointing a shaking finger an inch from Daniel's face. He unleashed a barrage of insults. "You worthless piece of trash. I don't have a son like you. How dare you drag this kind of shame onto this family?" My mother-in-law completely broke down, burying her head in her arms on the table and sobbing uncontrollably, unable to process that the son she bragged about was such a cruel fraud. The relatives started buzzing furiously. The exact same people who were slapping Daniel on the back 5 minutes ago were now glaring at him with pure disgust, whispering fiercely to each other. My own father, who had been sitting quietly at a side table, slowly stood up. The old man's face was etched with heartbreak for his daughter, but his expression was made of iron. He walked over to me, gave my shoulder a few gentle pats, and then looked my father-in-law dead in the eye. My dad's voice was low and gravelly, but it carried absolute authority. "Sir, now you know the whole story. My daughter didn't marry into this family to be subjected to this kind of humiliation. Since things have reached this point, I'm taking my daughter home and we will be filing for divorce. We're taking our granddaughter and we will raise her ourselves. Good day." I looked at my dad, my eyes burning, but I absolutely refused to cry. I had done the hardest part. The truth was out in the open, and the party had officially collapsed into chaos and the utter humiliation of my in-laws. My mom quickly gathered our things and scooped Lily up in her arms. My dad cleared a path for us. I grabbed my purse and followed my parents with my head held high, leaving Daniel choking on the disaster he had built himself. As we walked out of the restaurant, I heard frantic footsteps rushing up behind us. Daniel sprinted out into the lobby. His face, drenched in sweat, was pale with absolute terror. He blocked our path and tried to grab my hand, but my dad swatted his arm away violently. "Back off! Don't you dare block my daughter's path. Get the hell out of here before I call security." Daniel ignored my dad's shouting and dropped to his knees right in the middle of the lobby. The polished, swaggering guy from 15 minutes ago was completely gone, replaced by a pathetic, blubbering wreck with tears streaming down his face. He clasped his hands together and begged, his voice shaking uncontrollably. "Jennifer, please, hit me, scream at me, I don't care, but please don't divorce me. I messed up. I was a complete idiot. That woman manipulated me. I wasn't thinking straight. I'll cut off all contact with her, I swear to God. I'll dedicate my whole life to our family for our 3 years of marriage. Please, just give me one more chance. Please." I stopped and stared down at the man kneeling at my feet. I didn't feel an ounce of pity or hate. My chest was just hollow and freezing cold. I took one step toward him and answered in a totally deadpan voice. "A chance? What right do you have to ask for a chance? Your biggest mistake wasn't cheating on me or blowing cash on another guy's kid. Your biggest mistake was treating me like a prop with no feelings. You used me as a human shield to hide your affair. You bankrolled your mistress with my money, and you used my sacrifice as a stepping stone to decorate your own fake happy family facade. You never respected me, not for a single second. The only person you've ever loved is yourself." Daniel looked up, opening his mouth to spin another excuse, but I put a hand up to shut him down. "The show's over, Daniel. I'm filing the divorce papers tomorrow. You better start bracing yourself to split the assets and pay back that 15 grand you sent that woman. Goodbye." I turned my back on him without a second thought and walked out to the cab my dad was flagging down. I opened the car door and slid into the back seat with my mom and Lily. As the car pulled away, the image of that man slumped on the hotel lobby floor got smaller and smaller until he vanished completely. I let out a massive sigh of relief. It felt like I had just dropped 1,000-pound weight. The road ahead was going to be brutal, but at least I didn't have to sleep next to a liar anymore. The cab drove me out to my parents' single-story house with the red shingle roof just outside the city limits. Walking through that familiar iron gate and catching the faint smell of firewood stacked in the yard, I finally felt safe. My dad hauled my bags into my old childhood bedroom, while my mom bustled around making a bottle for her granddaughter. The unconditional care of my family seemed to melt away the exhaustion that had been building up all day. The first few days passed quietly, swallowed up by the endless chores of taking care of the baby. But when night fell and the dark closed in on that small bedroom, I had to face reality. I had been ruthless when I ripped the mask off my husband, but I was still made of flesh and blood. When I was left alone with my tiny sleeping daughter, a crushing emptiness would wash over me and squeeze my chest. Sleepless nights followed. I would stare blankly at the ceiling, replaying the past on an endless loop. The times we cooked together, the memory of picking out plates for our new apartment. Every last hope I had for a normal family had been violently stomped into the dirt. I didn't cry. It felt like my tear ducts had permanently dried up the day I uncovered that secret chat. But my body retaliated with bone-deep exhaustion. I lost my appetite. Even sitting at the dinner table, staring at the food my mom had cooked with so much love, I would just push it around my plate after a couple of bites. I dropped 10 pounds in just 2 weeks. Seeing my gaunt face and the dark bags under my eyes, my parents were absolutely gutted. My mom would cry out on the porch in secret at night, but in front of me, she always put on a brave face to keep my spirits up. Early one morning, I got up to make a bottle for the baby and spotted my dad in the corner of the yard, fixing up an old chicken coop. He turned to me and said in a quiet but unshakable voice, "Jennifer, you've got to stand back up, right where you fell. Losing a garbage husband isn't the end of the world. Look at Lily. That little girl needs a healthy, happy mother. Your mom and I aren't going to force you to forget, but you have to start taking care of yourself first." Hearing my dad's words and catching Lily's bright smile in my mom's arms, something inside my head finally clicked. My dad was right. I couldn't let the past nuke my daughter's future or mine. That empty hole couldn't be filled with bitterness or throwing a pity party. It could only be patched up by taking care of myself. From that day on, I decided to flip the script. I locked in a routine. Bright and early, I'd leave the baby with my mom, throw on some workout gear, and go for a run on the trail near our house. As I sweated it out, it felt like all those toxic thoughts were being flushed from my system. I bought a journal and started writing to clear my head. The act of putting pen to paper helped me purge all the sludge I was carrying around. I bought an adult coloring book and colored whenever I had a spare minute. Locking my focus onto those bright colors brought a real sense of peace to my brain. Beating the pain didn't happen overnight. There were still days when the sheer injustice of it all would bubble back up, but I refused to let myself drown in it anymore. I treated it like a lesson and faced it head-on. Thanks to my parents' love and my daughter's smile, I knew I was slowly clawing my way out of the mud, getting ready to officially nuke that toxic relationship once and for all. Mrs. Davis handled everything with lethal speed. Exactly 2 weeks after filing the lawsuit, all the divorce papers were locked and loaded. Thanks to the bulletproof evidence I handed over, Daniel's side couldn't mount a single counterargument in court. He had absolutely zero grounds to fight for custody of Lily. As for the assets, we agreed to sell the apartment and split the cash. The money he had secretly funneled to his mistress was ruled an improper disposal of marital assets, and the judge ordered him to pay back my half, $2,500. One Wednesday morning, I got a call from my lawyer's office to come in and sign the final paperwork before the court issued the ultimate decree. I ironed a sea green blouse and threw on a crisp pair of black slacks. Walking out the door, the autumn sky was incredibly crisp and blue, a massive contrast to the gray, pouring rain on the day I uncovered his little secret. When I pushed open the door to the lawyer's office, Daniel was already slumped on the couch waiting. In less than 2 months, his slick, polished look had completely disintegrated. He looked haunted. His eyes were sunken, and a dark shadow of stubble covered his jaw. The shirt he had on was wrinkled to hell. Seeing him, I felt a fleeting ping of pity instead of some massive rush of satisfaction. A guy who had hustled so hard to build up this glossy, perfect image had ended up torching the whole thing to the ground because of his own greed. Daniel practically jumped out of his skin when I walked in. He rubbed his hands together awkwardly. "You're here. How have you been? How's Lily?" "Lily's fine, and so am I." I pulled out a chair on the far side of the room and sat down, keeping a very deliberate distance. I gave him a curt nod and answered with pure ice. "We're doing great. You don't need to worry about it." Mrs. Davis walked in carrying a file and dropped it on the glass table. She asked both of us to read through the sections covering asset division, child support, and visitation rights one last time before signing. The only sound in the office was the soft scratch of paper turning. I read every single line, making sure I didn't miss a beat. Everything was exactly as I had demanded. I pulled a pen from my purse and signed my name with absolute authority at the bottom of the page. My signature was sharp and steady. When it was Daniel's turn, his hand was physically shaking. He hesitated for a long time, looking up at me. His eyes were swimming with regret and total helplessness. But looking at my stone-cold face, he seemed to realize that begging was a waste of breath. He slowly dropped his head and heavily dragged his pen across the paper. Once the formalities were done, Mrs. Davis scooped up the files. Just as I was turning to leave, Daniel looked up at me and asked, his voice totally broken, "Jennifer, the court gave me the right to pay support and see her. Can I come see Lily on Sunday afternoons?" At the end of the day, I'm still her father. I stopped at the door and looked back at the man who used to be my husband. Pure vengeance wasn't the vibe I wanted to raise my daughter in. I gave him a straight answer. "Fine, you can come see her on Sunday afternoons, but you better be on time and give me a heads up first. I won't have our schedule derailed." With those words, I pushed the door open and walked out. The warm autumn sunlight hit my face. The heavy glass door clicking shut behind me put a permanent dead-end stop to my 3 years of a wildly misguided marriage. All the paperwork was done. From that exact second, I was officially a free woman and a mother, geared up for the long haul ahead. The fallout after the legal battle was a blur of busy but bizarrely peaceful days. With the cash from selling the apartment and the funds Daniel was forced to cough up, I had a solid safety net. I dumped half of it into a college fund for Lily and used the rest to cover our living expenses. Since my maternity leave was wrapping up, I got on the horn with my company, laid out my situation, and pitched a work-from-home setup. Luckily, thanks to my track record and the years I'd put in, they gave me the green light, on the condition that I showed up at the office on Monday mornings for meetings. That setup let me keep my career on track without missing out on my daughter growing up. Being a single mom required a brutal level of self-discipline. Every single day, my alarm went off at 5 in the morning while Lily was still dead to the world. I'd lace up my running shoes and hit the dirt roads near my parents' house for a 30-minute run. The crisp morning air and the birds chirping in the bamboo groves totally flushed out the exhaustion from the day before. When I got back, I'd jump in the shower, chug a glass of warm water, fire up my laptop, and dive into work. Around 7, my kid would wake up, and the house would instantly fill with the sound of her laughing. My parents tagged in to watch her feed her oatmeal and buy me the silence I needed to crush my workload. I felt the deep family connection that I had never once felt living in that sterile, locked-down apartment with Daniel. On weekend afternoons, when I caught a breather, I'd sit out on the porch and paint. I painted the flowers popping up in the yard, the sky burning with the sunset, the crinkled smile on my dad's face as he chopped firewood. With every brushstroke, it wasn't just color filling the page. The deep cuts in my chest were slowly scabbing over, too. I realized that losing a toxic husband didn't mean my life was over. My world was still massive and vibrant, loaded with little moments of joy, as long as I kept my eyes open to catch them. My grind paid off. By the end of that year, I got totally recognized for knocking a massive project out of the park for my department and landed a promotion to team lead, complete with a fat year-end bonus. The day I held that raise notification in my hand, I treated myself to a killer dinner and bought a whole new wardrobe. The reflection staring back at me in the mirror was a woman in her 30s, sharp, put together, and radiating confidence. The ghost of the girl I used to be was completely gone. I had walked straight through the fire and built a brand new, unapologetic life with my own two hands. Life kept cruising along beautifully. Then, one winter night, I had just put Lily down and was getting ready to kick back with a hot mug of tea and binge a show when my phone buzzed with a new messenger notification. After the divorce, I had completely nuked all contact with my former in-laws, only leaving Daniel's number unblocked so we could coordinate about our kid. I picked up the phone and saw a text from a random, unsaved number, but the second I read the first line, I knew exactly who was on the other end. Jennifer, hi, how are you? It's Chloe. I know you blocked my number, so I'm messaging you from someone else's phone. Please don't delete this right away. I'm going through hell right now. The baby I had is just a few months old, and Daniel walked out on us. He blamed me for everything, saying he lost his home, his family, and his job, all because of me. He is a truly sickening person. He just packed his bags and vanished without a trace, leaving me and my baby stranded in a tiny studio with zero cash to survive on. I regret everything so much. I guess this is karma. I read the words on the screen line by line. The desperate begging from the other woman didn't move the needle for me at all. Maybe 2 years ago, right when the bomb dropped, I would have gotten a twisted kick out of watching the person who nuked my family get exactly what she deserved. But now, with my mind completely at peace, her little sob story was nothing more than cheap street gossip. I took a sip of my hot tea. The old saying that you reap what you sow was dead on. Daniel was a greedy, self-obsessed parasite who viewed women as stepping stones to get what he wanted. A guy who would throw away a fiercely loyal wife for a side piece was the exact same guy who would kick that side piece to the curb the second she stopped being fun and became a liability. Chloe made her bed the second she decided to live off a married man's wallet, and in the end, she choked on her own dependency. Their little war now was just a selfish, trashy blame game. Who was right? Who was wrong? Who was the real victim? And who was the biggest fraud? None of it had a damn thing to do with my life anymore. I had zero intention of texting her back, chewing her out, or giving her some grand life lesson. The most brutal punishment for traitors isn't screaming at them, it's total freezing indifference. Treating them like absolute ghosts who aren't even worth a passing thought. I hit the delete button, wiping the message off my phone forever, and immediately blocked that random number. I tossed my phone on the desk, pulled the blanket up over Lily, and stretched out. Outside, the winter wind was howling, but inside that little room, everything was perfectly warm. I had completely scrubbed those toxic losers out of my brain. Life is way too short. I don't have a second to waste watching other people's miserable train wrecks. My only mission was to live the rest of my days looking out for number one. Time truly flies. 2 years had passed since I walked out of that courthouse with my divorce papers. That spring brought a massive wave of joy. Thanks to living lean and stacking up performance bonuses, I finally closed on a sunny little apartment right near my daughter's daycare. The 2-bedroom place was painted a bright cream, and I lined the balcony with a bunch of planters full of my favorite purslanes. This place was 100% in my name, a bulletproof sanctuary I had built for me and my kid from the ground up. Lily was already 2. She was running wild around the house and learning to talk in these hilarious babbling sentences. My folks rode the bus into town to see their grandkid whenever they caught a break, always walking in loaded down with fresh veggies and meat from their little farm. That small apartment was constantly echoing with laughter. At exactly 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and popped the door open. Daniel was standing there, holding a box of wooden toys. For 2 solid years, he had shown up like clockwork to see our daughter once a week exactly as we laid out. Time seemed to leave drastically different scars on people. While I had put on some healthy weight and my skin was glowing, Daniel had visibly crashed hard. He had heavy gray streaks at his temples, and instead of the razor-sharp pressed shirts and suits he used to rock, he was wearing a beat-up faded jacket. I heard through the grapevine that thanks to all the drama, his career had completely stalled out. I pulled the door wide open and let him in with cold politeness. "Come on in. Lily's playing with her blocks in the living room." Daniel walked in looking thoroughly beaten down, wiping his boots on the mat before stepping inside. He walked over to Lily, crouched down on the floor, and pulled out the new toys he brought. Lily, totally unfazed, happily grabbed the wooden blocks and started building a house. Daniel watched his daughter with a look of absolutely crushing regret. He turned to me as I poured him a glass of water and said, his voice wavering, "Jennifer, your new place is really nice. Thank you so much for these past 2 years. After all the garbage I pulled, you could have easily locked me out of Lily's life. You could have taught her to hate my guts. But you didn't. You let me keep seeing her. I can't thank you enough for being so forgiving." I set the glass of water down on the table and answered him without missing a beat. "It's not because I'm forgiving. I just did what was right so my kid could have a normal childhood. She's innocent. She has every right to be loved by both her parents. I refuse to let her learn how to carry hate just because the adults screwed up. As long as you pay your child support on time and actually give a damn about your daughter, I'll respect that right. But whatever you and I had died a long, long time ago." Daniel dropped his head and didn't utter another word. He played with his kid for about an hour and then dragged himself out the door, looking completely gutted. When his shadow disappeared behind the elevator doors, I quietly shut my door and threw the deadbolt. Walking back into the living room, I scooped Lily up in my arms. She threw her little arms around my neck and planted a kiss on my cheek. The warm, early spring afternoon sun spilled through the balcony window, lighting up the whole room. I held my kid tight and looked out at the hustle and bustle of the streets below. Looking back at the brutal grind and the tears I'd shed, a deep, totally satisfied smile spread across my face. I finally understood that a happy home doesn't need a husband in the picture. True happiness comes from having the guts to ruthlessly cut out whatever is dragging you down, standing on your own 2 feet and taking absolute control of your own life. The first half of my life felt like a long, hazy nightmare. But now I was wide awake, living days that were totally free, fiercely proud, and more peaceful than I ever thought possible.